and Evolution, where I talk about fantasy through a scientific perspective, and today I'm going to be talking about the Lorax. Before I start, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, don't ask why I'm wearing a suit. It's weird. Life just happens sometimes. Movie, and they didn't really like it, but I think that the movie solves a problem created by the book. In the book, there's really no... Anyway. The problem that the movie solves, while he's selling it to all the people, and so he'd go out of business. The problem with the book is that the people who were living without trees probably wouldn't survive all that long. So where are they getting the oxygen? But he answers that question in the movie because he is where they're getting that oxygen. But then the next getting it from. Right now, we have carbon capture and sequestration technology, which means that it takes the carbon out of the air. Right now, this actually uses more carbon than it saves and therefore isn't efficient. It is also rather expensive, and it deposits the carbon in underground reserves, which means that it's also not efficient to use that carbon again for other things. On the other hand, necessity is the mother of invention, so I could rather easily see people inventing better CCS technology as a result. It's possible that O'Hare became a master of the technology, creating some new form of it that would allow him to patent it. Owning the patent, he could essentially rule over the technology and become a de facto ruler over the town. Perhaps the system that he invented used the carbon in some other way. Now, carbon is a primary resource in many things, both live and not, such as minerals, fuel, food, and so much more. If he used carbon to make the fuel that their houses and their cars operated on, then he could make sure that the carbon went back into the atmosphere and kept polluting. The constant pollution would allow him to maintain his business indefinitely and make him a monopoly. Now, there's another option for where he gets the oxygen. About 45% of the world's oxygen today is produced by some type of algae. This would explain why people are still able to live on planet Earth after the destruction of trees, although the percentage of oxygen produced would be significantly lower. Going back to the movie, there's no way for O'Hare to eliminate all of the algae. He would end up killing all the aquatic life, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but I assume that they need for them to survive, so he would ultimately be killing off humanity. But I don't even think O'Hare needs to kill off the sound. When Ted goes outside, there are no large bodies of water that could produce enough algae to sustain a population that big. This means that there's no algal production by any natural bodies in the area. Now, hot summers cause natural algal blooms, which take over a lake and prevent other plants lower down from photosynthesizing, but it might also mean that more oxygen exists and is getting produced. So perhaps the oxygen is being produced, but not enough to substantiate the population. It's much easier to sell on. The other thing is that with the heat, with no trees, which would cause the heat for the algal bloom, it's almost like this pond is reacting as a virus to fight the infection of. This also means that it is likely that O'Hare is using the algae to produce oxygen, and that is something that we see too. The tank produces algae when you feed it. using the algae to produce oxygen, and that is something that we see too. The tank produces algae when you feed it water as their habitat. And of course, we see the hummingfish pack up and leave the ponds, but they are clearly only semi-aquatic. That it is likely that O'Hare is using the algae to produce oxygen, and this is actually something that we see in modern technology as well. That you can have a tank of algae, and as long as you feed it, it will produce the oxygen, and you could capture it theoretically and then sell it the way that we see in the movie. Of course, we know that only 21% of our oxygen, but with supplemental oxygen, it would mix with the nitrogen and carbon dioxide, which are the other main two elements in our air, and that mixing would theoretically produce a healthy proportion of air when you breathe in. Of course, there might be some photochemical smog to fight as well. The numbers of fish would... The problem with all this pollution is with the algae, can't see or just haven't seen in the movie or the book. Now, the water would increase in temperature without trees due to the buildup of carbon dioxide, and its ability to take up more heat would increase. And it's almost like a virus is being fought, and that's the way that the algae is reacting to this climate crisis. Although there are very few people around in the book, the population center that we see that is theoretically there in the book and that is actually there in the movie must have been built around the factory, because we all know that people tend to flock to Many humans would also have died out without trees. What we see in the movie is a post-apocalyptic world where humans have banded together to form a fantasy world that can't last forever. Resources can only be recycled so many times. Without Ted going out of the city, their resources would have dwindled to almost nothing. You see, you can only cycle nutrients so long before they get uptaken. But say rain could wash them away, or other things could happen to just detract those nutrients from the system. And especially water. Water, you will have evaporation, and you will have some of it that is just lost. Like, even if you were to filter the water out of urine, you're going to lose that. So essentially, that population is kind of dying slowly without realizing it. One last note that I'd like to add, but say rain could wash them away, or other things could happen to just detract those nutrients from the system. And especially water. Water, you will have evaporation, and you will have some of it that is just lost. Like, even if you were to filter the water out of urine, some of that water is permanently connected to the urates, and you're going to lose that. So essentially, that population is kind of dying slowly without realizing it. One last note that I'd like to add on soil quality. Despite the fact that there are no trees, I think that the decaying of the stumps would enrich the soil enough to provide nutrients for future trees, as long as a couple of years had passed in between. The other resource that they could potentially use is their dead. Of course, I'm not sure that they know that, because there seems to be no agriculture. I'm not quite sure how they're surviving in that town in the movie. So it kind of creates a whole other set of problems. But I think that the soil quality could potentially be used. Well, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and the links to my social media are down below. New video next Wednesday. Bye.